Casey Molina here, and I first want to preface this video with I filmed this whole thing and then I realized that I needed to clean my camera lens. So I'm really sorry for the lower quality video that you experience if you decide to watch beyond this point, which I really hope that you do because maybe it'll be helpful to you. Hey, what's up guys? It's Casey Molina and I'm back with another video. For those of you that watched my last video, you know that I am living on an island in Spain called El Hierro. And El Hierro is in the Canary Islands. For those of you who don't know anything about the Canary Islands or El Hierro or Valverde, or you have no idea what I'm talking about, go watch my last video. But if you're here, thank you so much for coming. I wanted to make this video because I've been living in Spain for almost a month now, and it's been a journey. Honestly, from the time that I first came to Spain 2 years ago, when I went to Barcelona, I have wanted to come back. Yeah, I just loved the culture, I loved the people, I loved the food, and I was just really excited to come back and really immerse myself in a language that I had been studying for so long. So I was like, yeah, let me just go to Spain and full send. Since being here, I'm definitely experiencing a lot of the challenges that comes along with just moving to another country, speaking another language, and getting involved with an international community overall. So what has life been like since I have moved to Spain? Life has been great, honestly. I really can't complain. I just constantly have to reflect on how I'm living just such a unique experience, and also just the fact that I just feel really lucky to be here with my program, and to just be learning the things that I'm learning and getting to do the things that I've been doing, and just really exploring a place in Spain that I feel like is off the beaten path and something that I'm just gonna have such a unique take and perspective on for the rest of my life. But all of that being said, all of the great things being said, there definitely are challenges to picking up your life, especially after being fresh out of college and just moving across the world. So yeah, living in Spain does not come without its challenges, and for me, and again, the purpose of this video is really to just talk about what it's like to move to another country, performance anxiety when speaking a foreign language, and tips for you guys on how to get involved in international communities and some things that I started doing that I found really helpful. So let's get into that. Number one thing that I want to touch on first and foremost is performance anxiety when it comes to speaking a foreign language. Some of you might not have any idea what I'm talking about, but others of you, when I say performance anxiety, might immediately know what I'm talking about. So for me, I have been studying Spanish formally and informally since I was around 5 years old. In the United States, especially in the town that I came from, it was really common for children to start taking Spanish classes when they were in kindergarten. So I've been informally studying the language since I was 5 years old. I feel like I might have talked about this in previous videos, but my family, my dad's family, is Dominican and Puerto Rican, so they speak Spanish. I was never taught to speak Spanish when I was a kid, but I grew up listening to the language a lot, and so I think I adapted an accent pretty easily when it came to formal study in school, which kind of, I felt like worked to my advantage, but sometimes my disadvantage. Sometimes when I speak Spanish, I can say certain things that sound fluent, and I think then Spanish speakers think that I can just understand everything they're saying. They start speaking to me really quickly, and I'm like, no. But yeah, that being said, like the performance anxiety that I've experienced, I think I got to a place in school where I just got to a point with studying formally in a classroom setting where I felt like it was impossible to really pick up on the nuances of a language, just sitting there and reading it and writing it and studying it. And so I was like, you know what, I need immersion. And I think everybody gets to a place in their language learning where they need that immersive aspect to really grow and transform their ability to speak a language. So for me, this is kind of my first immersive experience with speaking Spanish. I mean, I've had other ones. I've been to the Dominican Republic, and things like that. But I will say, when I first came to Spain, when I went to Madrid, I was really hard on myself because first of all, the Madrileño accent is very hard for me to understand. It's a lot faster than the Spanish that I'm used to. The lisp is something that throws me off. They use the vosotros. All of it was just a lot for me, and I also hadn't heard spoken Spanish in a while, so I was very disoriented when I first got to Spain. I think the great thing about Canarian Spanish is that Canarian Spanish is typically spoken a little bit slower. The vosotros is sometimes used, but not really. It's more like ustedes and ellos, ellas form. So for me, that's kind of what I'm used to hearing. But even still, sitting down and having a conversation with somebody is so hard for me. I think for people that have studied a language, maybe you can empathize with this. When you're in a classroom and you're so used to reading and writing a language, listening to it is not something that comes naturally to you. So when I watch a Spanish movie, I can put the subtitles on in Spanish and I can easily understand almost everything that's going on and that's being said in the movie. However, when you're sitting down in a conversation with somebody, for me personally, not only am I not recognizing the words that they're saying, even though most of them are probably words that I know, but I also just have no idea how to even begin to respond. So that's been something that's been really hard for me since I've been here, I think, just because I feel like when you move to a country where, well, for me, an island where not a lot of people speak English, you are essentially forced into the language, which is great. It's amazing. It's so immersive, but at the same time, it can be really hard if you don't feel like you know the language as well as you thought you knew the language. So for me, that's definitely been a source of frustration since I've been here. But how to overcome this? So honestly, I'm not gonna lie, this is something that I'm still working through. It's something that I'm still working to overcome. I still have a lot of performance anxiety when speaking Spanish, but some things that have worked for me are, number one, just slowing down. I feel like when someone feels as though they've been studying a language for so long, they should be able to speak with like a native cadence and fluency and speak quickly. And Spanish is a very fast-spoken language, so I feel like a lot of times people feel like they have to speak just as fast as whoever they're having a conversation with. And I can tell you, for me, whenever I have this mentality, I set myself up for failure. Most of the things that I want to say in a conversation, I know how to say them. But when I'm in the heat of the moment and I get a little nervous and I psych myself out and that performance anxiety sets in, I just forget everything that I have to say. And then I don't know how to say certain things, and then I'm messing up my verb conjugations, and then I'm like getting so down on myself and so mad at myself in the midst of having a conversation with somebody that I mentally just shut down, and there's no way to even continue to have a conversation with me at that point because I will just nod and pretend like I understand everything that's going on, when deep down inside I just want to like put my head in a hole. Yes, so again, tip number one is just to slow down. Don't feel that pressure to talk very quickly. Know what you're going to say and just take your time saying it. Like, if you say it properly and you say it slowly, no one is going to think you're stupid. No one, well, hopefully they'll be able to understand what you said, but also it's just taking it easier on yourself. Tip number two is preparation. If you feel like you've been studying a language for a really long time, chances are you've probably learned something from a really long time ago, and maybe you had a really good grasp of it when you first learned it, so you never went back to it. And I think as language learners, that's something that a lot of us struggle with, is when you step outside of the formal classroom setting, you stop trying to learn new things and you stop reviewing things that you already know. However, if you're in the United States and you're in a place in the United States where, say, you don't have a lot of Spanish-speaking friends or anybody to really practice your Spanish with, that stuff slips away. And chances are you're not going to remember that you used to know it until you're in a conversation and you're trying to use it and you're failing miserably. So some advice that I thought was really good that was given to me that I would now like to bestow upon you is to prepare for conversations. it's completely okay to rehearse conversations that you could possibly have when you're in a conversation with somebody. If you know you're going to the store and you know that they're going to ask you what type of ham you want on your bocadillo, or if you want spices with that, go ahead and look up a list of different spices so that you know how to say salt or pepper or garlic salt or whatever it is you want to know how to say. You can look it up ahead of time. Like, there's no shame in doing that. If you know they're going to ask you, do you want a hot sandwich or a cold sandwich, you can know how to respond. A funny anecdotal story is that when I first moved to El Hierro, I had to go to the bank so many times because I just had so much stuff that I needed to do to get my residency and do all these things. And so I went to the bank so much that one of the bank tellers actually knew me. Like, she learned my name and she knew who I was. And we would just kind of laugh a lot about me messing up in Spanish because I would get there, and when I first got there, I was always trying to speak to her so quickly in Spanish, and I would just mumble, fumble all my words, and nothing would come out the way that I wanted it to. But as I kept going back and as time went on and I kind of established this trust with my bank teller, I felt really comfortable in making mistakes in front of her. And when I knew I was going to come back and see her, and when I knew I was going to have to ask for something, or if I knew she was going to ask me, like, how was my day, or did you find your debit card, or did you get your mail, I started rehearsing how to say those things so that in conversation I knew what to say. So to that point, yeah, it's totally okay to rehearse things that you're going to say with people. It's okay to make a little joke in your head that you have planned to say when you're going to see somebody, because I think when you're so used to speaking your native language, you don't think about the effort that goes into putting things together in a way that sounds native. And so when you're practicing a language that's not your native language, it's perfectly okay to rehearse all the things that you want to say. Even if you need to rehearse a joke, it's okay if it's not organic at first. It's like that phrase, fake it till you make it. And the next thing, one thing that I really struggle with is listening. Again, in school, we put so much emphasis on reading and writing a language that listening is not a huge part of learning a new language in the classroom setting. One thing that I, again, have really struggled with is being able to understand spoken Spanish. And shout out to my dad for giving me this advice, but I remember one of my first days in Madrid, I texted my dad, I was like, I'm terrified, I'm trying to understand people, nothing's making sense to me, I just feel like I don't speak any Spanish at all. And my dad was like, well, what's going on? Why don't you understand them? And I said, they just talk so fast. And it's simplest response ever, but he said, just be a slow listener. And that really hit home for me, because I think, again, the expectation that we sometimes place on ourselves is that someone speaking to you, you should be able to understand what they're saying. And if you don't, then you're stupid. And that's not the case at all. And also, too, one thing that I find really interesting is if you've ever thought harder about the way that you understand people in your native language, a lot of times you're just pulling out a couple words that you know in order to put together a thought and come up with a response. And so oftentimes when we're understanding or trying to listen to somebody speak another language, we're trying to understand every single thing, every single word that they're saying, instead of just pulling out words, fitting it within a context, and trying to understand it. So again, another thing that I've started doing is, instead of trying to translate every single word that's being said to me, I forced my brain to kind of identify certain words and phrases that sound familiar to me, and then based on that, I fit them within the context of a situation. If you know you're ordering food at a cafe and someone says jamón, and then they have a whole other string of words that come after that, you can think to yourself, okay, jamón, this is probably an option of meat that I can get on my sandwich, and they're probably asking me if I want it since I'm here ordering. And from then on, you can figure out how to either ask for clarification on what their question is. Another thing that I've gotten accustomed to doing is, if someone speaks to me really quickly in Spanish, I can identify 2 or 3 words and I'll repeat those words back. And I'll say, oh, jamón. And they'll be like, yeah, te gusta. And if you're like, oh, you're asking me if I like ham. Sometimes you can kind of get them to clarify just by like feeding them back a couple words. So I find that really helpful, and I do that a lot, and I still feel like an idiot, but it definitely is more effective than just sitting there and pretending like you know what somebody said when they're waiting for you to answer their question. Last thing that I want to touch on in this video is ways that you can get involved if you're new and you've moved to another country and you're new in an international community. And that is just find things that you like doing and do it as soon as possible. I think the faster that you jump in, the easier it is to kind of establish for yourself that you're not just going to be a recluse in your house every day, sitting there afraid to go out and explore your community. I have a habit of doing this. I struggle a lot with social anxiety when it comes to my routine and everything being disrupted, and so I create this like scenario in my head where I'm like, it's too dangerous to go outside, it's too dangerous to talk to people, it's too dangerous to go buy groceries. Like, I just come up with reasons why I can't leave my safe space. And it's all in your head. It's all made up. It's not there. You're gonna be fine. You can go for a walk. You can have a conversation with somebody. Even if you only know 3 words in the language, you can do it. It's fine. Just don't think about it too hard. Just do it. And I think the same goes for getting involved. I had this idea in my head that I didn't want to come off as annoying to anybody. I didn't want to be the person that seemed lonely, or that always had to do things by themselves, or just didn't have any friends. And when you think about it, you're like, that makes no sense. If I go to a place and I'm acting like I have all these friends that I don't have, I'm not going to have any friends. Like, it doesn't, no one's going to invite you out if you're saying like, oh no, I'm like super busy, I like have all these things to do and all these people to hang out with, when in reality you're just sitting in your house because you're sad that no one invited you out. So it's okay. Like, it still is very humbling for me, because again, I'm not gonna act like I figured it all out and I've cracked the code, but it's very humbling for me to show up and go to events that I find out about. And when I see people from school or people that I know and they're like, oh, are you here by yourself? Like, I'm just like, yeah, I'm alone. And they'll ask me why, and I'll say, oh, well, I don't have anybody to go to things like this with. And that encourages people to invite you out. Again, it might make you seem, you know, like that person that just doesn't have any friends. But guess what? You're new to this country and you don't have any friends. So it's totally okay for people to know that. And I think, again, for me, I just really had to practice being super open about that. When people ask me, what did you do this weekend? It was really hard for me to be honest and just say, I didn't do anything because I don't have any friends and I don't know any cool things to do around here. But then as you practice saying that, I know it sounds weird, but as you practice just being open and honest and vulnerable about the fact that you are feeling kind of lonely, people will reach out to you and invite you to do things. And so I think for me, once I kind of worked through that wall of my own pride and kind of broke into just a lot of situations of humility, I got invited to a lot more things. A friend that I work with at school had invited me to go hang out with her and her family. She invited me to take Pilates classes with her, which opened me up to a whole nother part of the community where I can be active and I can immerse myself in a Pilates class in Spanish, which has also just been really good for me, because then you start to create a schedule for yourself again. If you're like me and you're a person of schedule, and again, moving has disrupted your schedule and your way of doing things, you might be feeling kind of disoriented. And we're back to high quality because my camera died. Yeah, so as you're able to fill your schedule with more things, it definitely helps take away that feeling of anxiety that you might have about moving to this new place and your whole way of life being disrupted. So one thing that I'm really happy about is that my Google Calendar is slowly filling back up with things to do, and I'm like, here's to that. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really hope that it helped you. If you're somebody who's thinking of studying abroad, or you're thinking of moving abroad, or you're thinking of even just taking a vacation, I hope this was helpful to you. I know a lot of people on social media and Instagram might make it seem like it's effortless, it's fluid, it's easy, you just move and all of a sudden things fall into place and you have all these Instagram-worthy pictures, and that's not the case, because I literally have not even thought about posting on Instagram Well, I did post like one time. I barely like thought of like putting my life out on social media because I'm just in the process of trying to get my life together. So yeah. So all of that being said, I hope that this was helpful to you, and thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one. This is Casey Lena, over and out.